All right. Wallace Shawn is, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest playwrights of our time. His remarkable work, Designated Mourner, turned into a film by Mike Nichols, is one of my personal favorite works of American theater. He's written more than a dozen plays, appeared in more than 70 films, including the now iconic My Dinner with Andre, which he co-wrote with Andre Gregory. His monologues, plays, and essays constantly force us out of the comfort of habitual perspective. They make us re-see the world. His book, Essays, is out now in paperback, featuring the new essay, Why I Call Myself a Socialist. Is the World Really a Stage? In it, he writes, the global market selects out a tiny group of privileged babies who are born in certain parts of certain towns and certain countries, and these babies are allowed to live privileged lives. As for all the other babies, the market sorts them and stamp labels them onto them and hurls them violently into various pits where an appropriate upbringing and preparation are waiting for them. Don't hear that on Sunday morning talk shows much, do you? Wallace Shawn, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Great to see you.
I love the essay, and so I want you to read from a play that you wrote called The Fever, which you wrote around 1990.
Right.
It's a monologue. Tell us a little bit about what the setting of the play is, because it's a really wonderful work, and I think the essay echoes some of the themes that are in The Fever.
Okay, so basically it's about a traveler who gets sick one night in a poor country, and because he's sick, he has some thoughts he wouldn't have had if he was well. And, it changes from minute to minute, so it all takes place in his head.
He's ruminating on sort of his relative privilege and the relative deprivation of the people around him, and the juxtaposition of those two things.
He becomes obsessed with it in the course of this one night and has strange thoughts about himself.
Would you give us a little bit? Do you mind? Is that...
It's a great honor.
Great.
Except it makes no sense, except if you see the whole play.
And you performed this last weekend, am I correct, here in New York City?
I did, as a benefit for Haymarket Books.
Great. Well, give us a little bit.
Okay. It's the birthday party in the fancy restaurant. Yes, there's the table with its sweet and pretty decorations, the fanciful centerpiece, pink and green, and there are all the women in bright red lipstick, and the men in beautiful shirts, and all the gifts. Outrageous, unexpected, funny gifts. And there are the waiters serving the salmon and pouring the wine, and there I am. I'm talking quietly with that small, pale woman in the red and blue dress about the love affair with the older man, the criminals, the psychiatrist, about that film that disturbed her and the actress, about the walks at night through the woods in the country, the insatiable appetite for violent sex, the suffering of the people who live in desperation in the crowded shelter across the street from the fancy restaurant. And as I talked with that woman in the red and blue dress, I thought I was a person who was thinking about a party, who had so many complicated feelings about it, who liked some aspects of the party, but not others, who liked some of the people, but not all of them, who liked the pink and green centerpiece, but didn't really like that red and blue dress. But no, I see it so clearly. I see myself with my little fork. I wasn't a person who was thinking about a party. I was a person who was at a party, who sat at the table, drank the wine, and ate the fish.
Wallace Shawn, reading from The Fever. Thank you so much for that. The play and the essay both are meditations, I think, on privilege and relative privilege. And I wanted to know why this is something that so seems to preoccupy you in the work that you do.
Well, I grew up in a privileged background. By the way, I think you introduced me as a WASP, but I'm Jewish.
Yes.
So,
I was wrong. I said sort of, as I realized that...
We'll fit that in. I mean, I was raised as an atheist, but, and I'm still an atheist, but that's my background.
Two last names, though.
That's right. That's probably why.
Yeah.
We'll have more with Wallace Shawn right after we take this break. Wallace Shawn here. You wrote this play, The Fever, at a time right after the collapse of the fall of the Berlin Wall and sort of the collapse of communism writ large. Obviously, there's still some pockets of holdouts. And the play is sort of reconciles itself a little bit with how to think about equality after the end of communism. And I wonder how you see the political context of the play in 1990 wrestling with this question of the vastness of inequality that stretches the globe in 1990 and today in 2012, how that political context has changed.
Well, I had an interesting experience of doing the play in Poland for a bunch of, you could say, Polish intellectuals in the, say, around 93. And the play basically, the character in the play actually is given a copy of Karl Marx's Capital. And it even has friendly comments about Karl Marx. And the Polish intellectuals said, well, if you had done this play 5 years ago, we would have killed you because of our hatred of communism. Now that we've had 3 years of capitalism, we rather enjoyed your play. So now, just as in the real world, the conditions of industrial exploitation described by Marx are, in England, are recreated on the global scale, and people all over the world are working in factory conditions that are just the ones that Marx described in 19th century England. Similarly, you know, people are more prepared in a way to listen to arguments about the crimes of capitalism today than ever before.
Do you think that's true, Christiane?
Well, I was just going to share, I can't resist sharing with you a Russian joke, because I lived in the former Soviet Union in most of the 90s. And so one of their favorite jokes was around 93, 92, 93, 94. Everything Marx told us about communism was false, but everything he told us about capitalism is turning out to be true.
Right, yeah.
But I think that this is the core of it, right? That, you know, communism didn't work, and it was a terrible system economically and also politically, right? Let's not forget about the Gulag.
Sure.
But capitalism is causing a lot of problems too. And the only thing I would say about the conditions of the Industrial Revolution being exported to, say, places like China, which is true, is that the Industrial Revolution worked. It was actually a really terrific thing. And it's working in China and India as well. Now, the way it works is brutal and horrible, but it's also true that hundreds of millions of Chinese people have been lifted out of absolute poverty. So it's a contradictory process, isn't it?
I would think there's another kind of adding to what you might call the confusion, or the search for some kind of way to make this work. You look at the conditions you described. Then you look at Greece, which is, there's a piece in the New York Times Magazine today about what's happened in Greece. I mean, it's incredible decline in the standard of living, incredible rise in suicides, basically rooted in the fact that they borrowed too much money and lived too well without producing, which is not a failure of capitalism, it's a failure of something else.
Right. And
then you look at, for instance, the one country in Europe that seems to be relatively the healthiest, and it's Germany, which is this weird mix of capitalism, but then a very strong safety net, very highly paid, organized labor.
Labor union members on corporate boards.
Yes. And then, but then you look at what's happened in the United States with public unions, where you have three people like Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago, Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, and Jerry Brown, governor of California, saying all together, this is unsustainable. So that the point is, whatever model you have in your head about the way things work, there are real problems with it.
Heather McGee wants to respond to the point of public unions. We've gotten from the fever to communism to public unions in about 3 minutes. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to let you respond to that. Just to quickly recap, fall of the Berlin Wall, the Second Industrial Revolution, global capitalism, the exporting of working conditions similar to like those found in the 19th century now to today's countries like China, where and the Foxconn factory, for instance, where things are made, and the theme of how we are reckoning with the vision of global capitalism that we now find ourselves with, and the fact that it connects us, and I think this is the key thing, it connects us with everything we own. I mean, I don't know where this pen was made, but I assume
Thomson Reuters pen.
It's a Thomson Reuters pen, but I assume it was probably made in China. I think we assume that about many of the things we have. The global supply chain connects us through the items, every single item in our life, everything we touch as we move through the world, connects us with a chain of stories of other human beings who are on the other side of it, who are absolutely invisible to us, completely invisible to us, and who live lives that can be quite difficult. And whether in the long run that is the best thing for raising living standards or not, the fact of the matter is there is a tremendous empathetic gap, just a perceptual gap between where we stand and where we do. And I feel like that's part of what your work has been trying to address.
Well, a lot of the fever and a lot of what I've written is connecting the American and Western attempt to keep the world the way it is through violence to you and me. In other words, the system that we have is actually not necessarily pleasing to the people who are on the bottom of it. They might very well change it if they weren't crushed by the threat of force. You could call it revolution. You could call it, change of any kind. But most people who are being squashed actually don't like it, and they're kept in their positions by the fear that they'll be killed or tortured. And we're the beneficiaries of that, whether we have liberal opinions or reactionary opinions. We are enjoying a privileged life because of the fact that the world is the way it is. And maybe in 100 years, China will be more prosperous because of the exploitation of workers today. I really don't know. But we're having a good time today because of it.
The causal link between what is happening in China. Jeff Greenfield, you're skeptical of it. I want to hear you respond to that when we come back after this.
Just thinking.